So you say you want to be a better shooter. Well, step right up and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Alright, so if you want to be a better shooter, there's no getting around it. You got to put in trigger time. Now, trigger time doesn't mean necessarily that you've got to go to the range. Not everybody can go to the range as often as they'd like to, and ammo is expensive. So what can we do to become better shooters without dedicating a lot of time and money to the issue? Well, you're not going to get around the time thing. You have to put in the time. The money issue we can work with a little bit, and the way we're going to do this is through Dryfire. Any serious shooter got that way by putting in a ton of trigger time doing Dryfire. Now, what is Dryfire? Dryfiring is operating the gun while it's empty. So you're using the gun just like you would normally. You're aiming at a target and you pull the trigger. You do all the normal things, except instead of a bang, hopefully, you get a click. And because you've been watching the sights very carefully through this process, when the gun goes click, you can see that the sights were aligned, which means you would have gotten a hit, or whoops, the front sight dipped a little because you pulled the trigger a little too hard, which means the shot would have gone low. Thus you can see what your mistakes are and you can correct them. Now the nice thing about Dryfire is that there's no recoil or noise to hide your mistakes, so as long as you're focusing on your sight alignment, you'll be able to see where the bullet would have gone if you'd actually been firing a cartridge. There's no cost involved because you're not actually firing any ammo. You can do it anywhere because you're not firing ammo, so you don't need to be on a range. Anywhere, obviously not anywhere you want to do this in public, but you can certainly do it at home. Now let's talk a little bit about the specifics on doing the Dryfire so that you're safe about it. Alright, so what are the things I'm looking for in a place to Dryfire? One, I want a safe place. So whatever wall I'm aiming at, I want it to be something that if I screw up and there is a cartridge in the gun and I get a bang instead of a click, I want the wall I'm aiming at to be okay. So I don't want to be aiming at a drywall, sheetrock wall that my children's on the other side of that, or my neighbors or anything else. So whatever wall I'm aiming at has to be able to take the impact of a bullet safely. In this case, I've got a concrete wall here, and that's going to not allow a bullet to pass through. And on the other side of that wall, if for some reason the bullet does manage to go through, there's nothing for a long ways. There's no way that my bullet, if it did get through the wall, could harm anybody else. That's the first thing I'm looking for in a room, is that I can have a wall, that it is safe, that if the gun discharged, I can live with the consequences of that. I need something to aim at, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Now, for precision Dryfire work, I want something small, and that could just be, a nail in the wall, or a little sticker or something like that. In this case, I'm just going to aim at one of the screws on this this plate. That gives me a very small target, something that is precise to aim at. I'm going to talk to you in a moment about a different type of target, but that's what we're going to be doing first off. I'll put the camera behind the gun while we do some Dryfire so you can see what it looks like. So let's, and the last thing I want in a room is I want somewhere where I can be undisturbed. So I can concentrate on what I'm doing and not get confused about what I'm doing and think I've unloaded the gun when I haven't because the phone rang or somebody asked me a question while I was in the process of unloading the gun and I messed up the process. So a wall that will take a bullet and a place that's quiet where I'm undisturbed. Now the other type of target that I like for dry firing is a full-length mirror, or close to full length, because that gives me a target that is very realistic. It's a human being, it moves around, and this allows me to aim at something. If I've got a self-defense gun, I'm thinking that I may need to engage a human at some point. So probably a good idea to practice that. The other advantage to using a mirror for dry fire is I get to watch myself, so I can see where my mistakes are and can immediately correct them. So, dry firing with precision using your sights, yeah, that's great as far as it lets you see if you're aiming well and making any mistakes in trigger pull or aiming. But it doesn't let you see any of the other things you might be doing as far as how you're standing, how you're presenting the gun from the draw, that sort of thing. So, when I have a full-length mirror as a target, I can watch my draw, and I bowled the draw there, so I know that that wasn't the best. So let me try that again. So, and also now I'm looking at, where are my targeting areas, right? So I know that the heart on a human being is between the armpits, so I'm looking at where the armpits are, and so the heart is about the size of a fist, just off the center line to the left. I've got the head if I want to try for a headshot. So once again, I can look at my stance and see what my draw looks like. How does clearing the holster look like? Am I getting that proper? Am I going to retention and punching straight out? So I think a mirror is a very valuable addition to your dry fire routine. Now historically, most accidents that occur during dry fire do not occur during the dry fire practice. They occur afterwards. And generally what happens is the person will load the pistol up after the session, and then a few seconds or a few minutes go by and they decide to try just one more, forgetting that they have a live gun now. And that's generally where we end up with problems. But we should start our dry fire practice before we enter the dry fire room. And you should have a place where you can put your stuff. So I have a bowl here right outside the door of the room that I'm going to dry fire, because I don't want any live ammo in the room that I'm dry firing in. So I'm going to take off my spare magazines. And I'm going to draw my pistol. And I'm going to visibly and physically check the magazine well and the chamber that the gun is indeed empty. But rule number one, it's still a loaded gun. And then I'm actually going to pat myself down. Oops, yeah, see? There's another magazine. So it seems kind of funny that you're double checking yourself, but we forget things. So pat yourself down, make sure you do not have any other magazines on you. Now we can go in and do some dry fire. Okay, I just had a great dry fire session, and it was solid. I feel like I did some good. And let's talk about duration. Don't spend a lot of time on this. You want to do, I'd rather have 5 quality minutes of dry fire than 30 minutes where you're rushing and not paying attention and not really caring. In this practice, quantity is not as important as quality. So focus on being good. I'd rather you get 10 or 20 good trigger pulls than 100 crappy ones, because all you're doing is reinforcing crappy stuff. Alright, so I'm done, and I want to reload the gun. Now, this is critical, although it seems silly. When you're done dry firing and you're about to load the gun, you need to say out loud, the dry fire session is over. Say it. The dry fire session is over. Now I know it's silly, who am I talking to? But it's an important aspect. Remember I said earlier that most accidents occur with dry fire after the session when the person reloads the gun and they try just one more. By saying out loud, it makes it very positive in your mind that this is done, we're over. And by speaking, by verbalizing, vocalizing, we're actually engaging a different part of our brain than just by thinking the thought. So say it out loud. Dry fire session is over. Now you can load the pistol. I'm Peter Burlingame of the Self-Defense Initiative. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, tell your friends about us, and be safe out there.